All right. I think we're live.
Yep, should be.
We
Looks
should
good.
be, right? It looks live. 14 seconds. How you doing, man?
Doing well, doing well. Just getting ready for a big trip, but other than that, just staying busy, doing well. How are you?
Good, 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 good. Let's give everybody kind of a minute here to log in. And
Yeah. This system's cool too because it's just gonna push it out live as well. So,
yeah,
um, yeah, good stuff. And we got a couple chiming in here.
yep,
So
yep, yep. So good stuff.
cool.
All right.
Yeah,
You're driving while we do a webinar. I love it. That's cool.
not just riding in the car, not driving, but
Yeah,
yeah,
right in
it's
the car.
busy,
So
busy
yeah.
days. Hey, John. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I think it's cool. A lot of people might not think it's the coolest topic, but employee versus vendor, something that we deal with a lot on the vendor side, a lot of feedback from, and a lot of clients have questions on this, and it's honestly one of those things that's just so good to talk about because it's just such a
It's one of those.
company or looking for vendors. So
Yeah, and you just froze up there, Joe. So you probably have to repeat.
yeah, sorry about that. I had great connection this whole time. But yeah, so what I was saying is it's just one of those things that's great to talk about because when you it's a common objection that you're dealing with clients. Oh,
Yeah.
we'll hire in-house. We don't have to hire, we don't have to outsource it. It's a common thing that occurs. And even if you're working with the client, sometimes they think, oh, we'll just hire somebody in-house. So it's a great discussion to have, and it gives everybody something to think about when they have these conversations.
And it's one of those things that's really interesting because I've been in this business since I was 21, pretty much, and I'm 56 today. And it's one of the
Mhm.
topics that has never died out, right? So that means for almost 30
Mhm.
years we've spoken about this, and there's no right or wrong. And it's one of these questions that always come up, right? And people always ask, what is the best thing to do? Is it best to hire in-house? Is it best to outsource this? And I don't know. I can't tell. I know that there's different advantages and different disadvantages, but it kind of is what it is. So all good. And I hate to say it, Joe, you froze up again. And for everybody who's chiming in, welcome. We're gonna give it 1 or 2 more minutes before we get started, so we're sure that everybody kind of gets on and have a chance to chime in.
All right, am I back?
You're back.
All right, so
Not bad.
yeah, go
All
figure.
good.
Yeah, we're great connection
Yeah.
till we start. But yeah, well, good stuff. Well, let's
Let's get started, huh?
hey hey guys, see everyone saying hello. Hey guys,
All right. Let's go here and see how we do
go to
it.
the first one.
First slide. You see it, Joe? All right. Well, what we're talking about here, since Joe is jumping in and out, is one of the
Christian,
most,
say you go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
yeah. So this, what we're talking about here, is one of the questions that we always get. And like I said before we got started, I've been in this game for a very, very long time. And one of the things that people always ask me, and when I say people, I typically mean clients. Clients always ask me, hey, should we hire somebody or should we outsource it? And to begin with, when you start talking to clients, there's always, at least in my experience, kind of a this idea that they want to hire in-house, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the nature of this game. I kind of feel like, and no matter what you do, if you hire in-house or if you outsource it, both comes with pluses and negatives, right? So it's more who's the company, what's the company culture, what do they have tolerance for, how big is the program, how little is the program, and more importantly, who is the actual principal? Do they need to have an in-house program? Had they have one before, or should they outsource it all, at least for a period of time, and then maybe insource it later? There's so many questions, and that's what we're trying to kind of go over today. While you have signal, do you have anything to add to that, Joe?
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, that's the big thing. It's a constant back and forth. Even if a client, is in-house, they're thinking about going outsourcing. Even if they're outsourcing, they're thinking about bringing it in-house. And then what you said there at the end, even that combination, there's a lot of questions and a lot of fluctuations there as well. Even if they do a combination of both, should they do more of one or the other? So yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So I'm jumping to the next slide here. I think most companies, and I like the way you put up the slide here, Joe, and say the illusion of simplicity. EP is so simple, right? We all know that. Absolutely. And hiring for EP is so simple, right? I don't think so at all, actually. I think it's super complicated. And I think one of the biggest
that's the thing.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that most companies have is that they think it's really simple to hire for an EP position. And it always struck me as really weird, right? Because some of these companies that hire EP agents are huge companies who have thousands of employees already. But just figuring out how many EP agents do you actually need for a detail can sometimes be an issue. People always think we hire 1, 2, or 3 guys, and then the EP program kind of runs by itself. More than often, you figure out that it takes more than that. It takes a manager, it takes a leader, it takes policies, it takes workaround, it takes a lot of stuff to fit into the culture of the company and stuff like that. And when you go out and you hire internally, you're kind of stuck with what you got, right? So you hire a person who tells you in a job interview that you can definitely do this, but this person might never done it before. And once you've hired them, you're kind of stuck with it, right? And then once you get the EP team up and going, all of a sudden, if they become successful, they work all the time, which means that there's a chance of burning out. There's a chance of them getting sick. There's maybe slow periods of time or busy periods of time where more staff is needed. Or there's times where the principals doesn't travel or they don't need EP as much. So you can easily be stuck with EP agents that either doesn't really work or they are not able to do the job they're supposed to do the job, or they end up kind of costing you a lot more money than they would have been if you had outsourced it, right? So it's not a simple thing to do no matter how you do it. If I jump over to the next slide, it looks like we lost Joe completely here. One of the things that a lot of people don't always see is there's a lot of advantages, at least in the short term, to use vendors. And when you say that and you're a security vendor, there's always a chance of people saying, well, you just say that because you're a vendor, or you just say that because you're trying to sell your services or whatever. I say this from experience, nothing else, right? And that's why I'm saying there's a lot of advantages, at least in the short term, to have a vendor staff and help you build your program. First of all, it's relatively easy for you to check the vendor's credentials and past experiences and ask the vendor, how many programs have you built before? How successful were they? How do you measure this? Do you have tools to measure success? Do you have tools to measure the quality of the programs that you built? If you hire somebody in-house, it's very hard for you to go out and build a tool where you can evaluate yourself. It's very hard for you to go out and talk about how successful you've been when you haven't been hired in this position before. And maybe you built EP programs in-house before, which is totally great. And that's definitely what you should look for. And that's definitely the way you should go down if you want to get people to build the programs and hire them internally, at least to begin with. Some of the other things that is one of the big advantages of having a vendor starting up an EP program. When a principal haven't had EP before, it's very challenging for them to get an EP program overnight, right? If you can imagine, you were just your own master yesterday, but from tomorrow, Phil and Joe and Christian over there, they're going to follow you around. They're going to be with you on every trip. And every time you get out of the office, they'll be with you, right? That's a big step. And most principals are not ready for that. They don't know what to expect. And very rare has there been a discussion with the principal before you start of how is this going to look like? And what impact is it going to have on your work life? And more importantly, what impact is it going to have on your private life? And on top of that, how is your family and how's your coworkers and how's everybody else going to react to you all of a sudden have protection, right? So there's a big chance of the principals might not appreciate or understand or even like the security setup that we built for them. If they're hired internally, it's hard to switch out guys. It's hard to make some kind of rotation. It's kind of hard to say, hey, Mr. Full-time employee, we don't need you anymore, but we still need somebody. Can you be switched with somebody else? Where if you hire a vendor, it's relatively easy to say to a vendor, hey, I don't think Joe is the right profile. Can we get somebody else? Because the client doesn't like the way he does things. The other thing that Joe has on this slide here as well is the whole thing of backup for vacations. It's scalable when you have a vendor that do it for you. And the burnout factor can be reduced because it's easy for a vendor to add more agents into the mix. That's very hard when you have hired your whole team internally. It might be something that you want to work on once the team has been running for a while, right? And that's why I said in the beginning that it can be a big advantage, at least in the beginning, to work very closely with a vendor company. So there are definitely some advantages on that whole thing, and especially in the beginning. Are you with us, Joe, or are you still trying to get a signal? Yeah, I think we might have lost him at least for a little while. One of the things that people also tend to forget is executive protection is a special thing, right? And not one solution fits everybody. I know that we go to a training school, and at the training school, we learn how to provide executive protection. Some people learn it in the government. Some people learn it before they come to this detail. And no matter if you're hired in-house or if you're hired through a vendor company, the elements of protection is always the same, right? We can all figure out how to protect the client. And probably most of us can agree that there's not that much difference on how you protect the persons or the principals if you're an in-house guy or a vendor guy. The principles of protection is the same. Fine. But the principles of protection and the actual protection work for a detail to be successful or not successful, that's probably 60%, 70%, where 30% or 40%, depending on the principles, depending on the corporation or wherever it is that you work, is the personality. It's the touch. It's how the client wants it. It's the company culture. It's all of those things, right? And you can have the best team in the world, both as a vendor, as an in-house guy as well. But if the principals don't want you, or they don't like it, or they don't kind of get a good feeling from what it is that you're trying to provide, chances are that detail will never be successful, right? And one of the problems that you always have, and I've never seen a protective detail in all the years I've been doing executive protection, where everybody was hired before you started and there was no changes in the building years, right? It's almost impossible to get it right the first time, which is why what we always recommend is that if you want to build a protective detail, you should try to build a combination of in-house people and outsourced people. And the reason for this is exactly what we're talking about here. You don't know what you don't know until you get protection. So if the principal decide that, okay, I'm going to bite into this, I'm going to be okay with them building a protection program around me, that's great. But once you start having us around, all of a sudden you kind of like have a different feeling. Your whole demeanor looks different. The way you're presented when you do speeches looks different. All of a sudden you're not 100% in charge of your own logistics and all of that stuff, right? And that can be an issue. So one of the things that can be so hard is the things that people don't talk about, right? Because if you have a let's say a bank CEO that comes from a very formal industry, or somebody who's head of a healthcare or hospital or whatever, that's also very formal industries, or you come and you're a CEO out of Silicon Valley or one of those places where there's a way more relaxed culture. When we as agents or managers or supervisors go in and apply for these jobs, if we haven't looked into what kind of culture this company have, maybe we apply for the wrong jobs, right? Maybe we're the wrong people that get hired for this specific detail. And once we're in there, we're going to try and change everything around us, which is impossible because we know how to do protection. So we always feel it's kind of like everybody else that's wrong, right? It's not us, because the protection we can do. But if we don't fit in culturally, it's almost impossible to get it right. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about when they build it in-house is the whole thing of training, adaptability, scalability, that you might not need to hire 10 agents in-house. What you need is maybe 2 guys, 3 guys, and then you find a really good vendor company that can support you with the rest of the agents that you need, because you don't need them all the time. And one of the big faults and big mistakes that a lot of people do when they build an EP team is that the principal wants it, the company wants it, you have the funding, you have a budget, you go out and you hire more guys than you actually need, right? And if that happens, you have all these people sitting around and invent pretentious assignment or jobs that they don't really need, and it becomes really complicated, and eventually there's going to be an internal audit, and they figure out that you spent a ton of money and they didn't get exactly the protection programs that they were hoping for. So it can be shut down really fast or get a very negative feel with the client and everybody else, because at the end of the day, when you get to a level where you need protection, you definitely don't want to spend money on something that you don't need, right? And that's why it's so important that you hire, if you hire internally, what you need, at least in the beginning, no more, maybe a little bit less, and then find a company that could support you. So you still have the adaptability and you still have the scalability, but you might not put the program at risk by building it too big, too fast. It's definitely something that we have we've seen many times. If you go out and you look at some of the comparisons, and this is just some of the comparisons that Joe has put up here, and if I go over them really quick, and there's so many other ones, right? But some of the factors that can be a potential challenge is the continuity and the coverage, right? If we talk about something that is that simple, if you have employees, can employees cover the CEO when he's at work? Absolutely. Can agents that work for the company cover him when he's on private time and when he goes on vacation and when he's home with his family? Maybe, maybe not. If that's the case, have there been an IRS 132 made that kind of clarify these things? Do you have SOPs and do you have standards kind of in place for when can the corporate team cover the principal? At least it's something that you need to have some kind of guidelines for. If you go to a vendor company and you say, hey, we're going to buy an EP team, can vendors provide protection for the CEO when he's in the office and on corporate time? Yes. Can they do it when he's with the family and private time? Yes, they can. Is there any holdbacks for this? No, I mean, it's the vendor solution might not always be the best solution because it depends a lot on the vendors, but it also depends on how willing the company are to let the vendors in and share the information and all of that stuff with the vendors. But the only restrictions and the only pushback there is, for the most part, is a question about having a budget. If you have a budget, the vendors can typically cover most of the stuff, at least in the beginning. The next one that Joe has put up here is the flexibility. And I touched about it a little bit. When you work for a corporation, stuff like work-life balances is real. Overtime is real. The whole thing of being on corporate time versus private time, all of that stuff is real. Unfortunately, and let me say unfortunately, because it should be the same way with vendor companies, but it's not always the case. When you work for a vendor, a lot of times, especially smaller companies and companies outside of especially California, New York, and the States where this is starting to be an issue, vendors in general can be way more flexible because vendors typically find a way, right? I mean, they live by what they can sell. And if there's a problem, they can be creative in the resolution of the problem. Where if you work for a Fortune 500 company or whatever, there's more stringent rules for how much you can work, what can you cover, stuff like, let's say you're going on a trip with the principal and the EP team needs to pick up expenses. Can you ask people in a Fortune 500 company to pick up expenses and maybe be reimbursed a couple of weeks later and wait another couple of weeks for your money and all that stuff? Or is it easier to just ask the vendor to issue some credit cards for the agents that you get through the vendor company? I know what have worked best for us, but I'm not saying that it's the best solution. I'm just saying that sometimes it's way more flexible, right? Specialization is another thing. If you have an in-house detail, they'll be with the principal, right? And they still have to be part of either corporate security, but they're also employees by this company and stuff like that. So it can be a little hard to specialize, right? And hopefully the people that you hire originally have the specialization and knows their tradecraft so well that they can be part of the whole process of having the know-how on how to build this program. When you're a vendor, one of the big advantages that you have is that you can always bring in people smarter than yourself, and you can bring them in short-term, long-term, whatever is needed. You have that flexibility. The bad thing about being a vendor on this is that you have to be smart enough to admit what you don't know and go out and seek the help that you might need if you can't do it yourself. But at least you have a possibility to be more flexible. One of the big things that the in-house guys can do is they probably know the company better and they know the rules and all of that stuff for the CEO and the Fortune 500 company or whatever it is that you're hired through, and they can definitely be more specialized in that than the vendors can. And that's probably one of the big pluses on hiring internally. The customization is another thing that can be really hard, right? Because if you work at a Fortune 500 company and you're one of the EP agents or you're the EP manager of, let's say, a 8-man team that has 2 or 3 principals, one of the things you're going to figure out is that all principals are different, right? Protecting the CEO is not necessarily the same as what it is to protect the CFO or the COO or whoever else, right? And they might be very different people. And you don't always know this when you hire EP agents, right? You kind of like put an ad in the paper you do your job interviews, you find a manager to run the team, and then you hire the 6 or 7 different agents. And that's all good, right? But if the CEO is super active and has a lot going on, always travel, has a very challenging or very active social life, and do a lot of stuff in their spare time or whatever, that caters to a certain level of agents that kind of like that and thrive in that environment. But all of a sudden, they also have to, let's say, protect the COO, who might not travel a lot. They might stay home. They don't do much in their spare time. They like to be home with their kids in the weekends and in the evenings, and they don't come to work full time. Maybe they work from home a couple of days or whatever. But the 8 agents that you have to cover this all come from the same pool of people, and you might not know this when you originally hired the team, right? So it can be very hard to customize people, and it's one of the things that we see a lot, especially if leadership change or whatever. You have agents who were catered to protect the CEO, and they did really well in doing that. But all of a sudden, the CEO goes to another company, or he retires, and a younger version, an older version, a more experienced version comes in. And these same agents then all of a sudden have to protect this guy, but he might not like the way that they did it before, right? So that can be super hard. And it's one of the things that's always so important, that we realize that we have to customize it for these people all the time, right? When you're an employee, that can be difficult to maintain, but it can also be super difficult to maintain as a vendor, right? Because we want to tailor the support, we want to structure the support. But one of the big things that is really hard when you're a vendor is that most vendor companies have a relatively high turnover. And we have a high turnover because a lot of the companies that our agent works for are not great companies, right? So agents always seek a better detail. Other companies always looks like the grass is greener. There's a lot of jumping from detail to detail. I guess that's the culture we live in these days. So they battle with turnover, and they battle with keeping the sustainability up that way, right? At least when you're in-house and you work for a Fortune 500 company or whatever, they don't see the same level of what do you call, like people not staying long enough to protect the principal and stuff like that, and you're not getting sustainability that way. When you're in-house, another thing that can be a big issue that you have to think about when you want to talk about building or buying a program is the whole thing of burnout risk, right? If you burn out, but you don't tell anybody you're burned out, because if you tell anybody you want to burn out, you have to do something about it. But let's say that you're burned out, you don't want to travel, you're kind of like starting to be depressed, you don't like your job, whatever. If you're in a corporate environment, there's probably chances for you to seek help, right? But you would have to admit it, and you would have to go down that route. And it's very rare that I see EP agents actually do that. Instead, a lot of people go to work, become very disillusioned and very negative, and they tend to have a negative tone in their jobs. And when you work in a large corporation or a Fortune 500 company or whatever, there seems to be, and this is just my experience, so forgive me if I say something here that's out of line or piss anybody off, but that's always the risk when you speak in public. There's a tendency that I've seen that you can get away with that for a very long time, and it's very hard to turn it around, right? And especially if a manager starts picking up on this, there's a whole process that has to go through, and a case like that can easily last for a long time. If you have an outsourced EP team and some of the agents seems to be burned out, it's very easy for the manager to call the vendor and say, hey, I feel like Christian is not performing the way he used to be. Maybe you should put him on another detail. Maybe you guys should give him a couple of weeks off, or maybe he's not fit for us anymore. And I know this is harsh, but it's one of the biggest advantages, I would say, that corporations have when they work with a vendor. So I think that's a super important thing to kind of remember in this. I know there's a million other things here that we could talk about, But at the end of the day, I feel like you guys, if you're still with me on this, get the picture of how this works. When you're in-house, there's a lot of great pluses, but you always work with one or two clients. When you work for a vendor, there's a lot of times a lot of challenges with that. But if you have a good vendor company that you work for, you can stay there for a long time and you get to work with different clients. And it can teach you a lot because you see a lot of different ways to kind of solve the same problems, right? So it's two different things that have two different pluses and minuses. There are some key takeaways that Joe put up here for this slideshow. And one of the things that a lot of people have to remember, no matter if you're in-house or out-house or outsourced, EP is never a one-man game. If it's a one-employee game, there's a lot of coverage gaps. If you're a team, yes, you can fill these coverage gaps a lot better, but there's still some challenges. The whole thing of private time, office time, whatever, is definitely something that you have to be aware of. If you're a vendor, it looks like there's a lot of kind of like advantages because it's more sustainable, there's more flexibility, and it's easier to find expertise from the outside. The main takeaway here is probably that no matter what, it's a team-based model. Nobody can do protection in a 365 coverage way by themselves. There has to be more than one person doing it. And I also think that one of the questions that I always get, and we're coming here to the last slide, and after that I'll open it up for questions. But one of the things that I think is very unique and very important to tell, and it's probably, if you ask me, the one thing that I would love to get out of this this webinar here, and if there's one thing that you guys take away, and it comes from me have been involved in building so many programs I can't even remember. If you look at the charts Joe did here, it says make or buy. On one side, we can make it, and we can do it all in-house. Is that the best way to go? Or you can buy it and you can contract a vendor. Is that the best way to go? I don't think any of them are the best way to go. I think that the best way to go is to make a mix of the two. I think there's so many ways that vendors and in-house teams can work together. And I think that the best EP teams that I've worked with was a combination of both, right? If I were to build an EP team, if somebody came to me and said, hey, Christian, you've been in this game as a vendor for a long time, come to my corporation and help me start an EP team. One of my first kind of talks with whoever would hire me for this would be, what are my rules for hiring quality vendors? And if they would say to me, well, you gotta kind of like find the people and we hire them internally, I would probably say, I'm not interested in that job. But if I can hire half of them internally, or I can run them via, or find them via a vendor company that supports me so they can work for the vendor company, let's say for 6 months, 8 months, or a year. And if they turn out that the client likes them, they like the culture, they are good to work with, I get along with them, well, then we can hire them, right? But me just doing a job interview with somebody wouldn't make me sure that these people would work with this client. Actually, if somebody came and headhunted me to come in-house and run this detail, I don't even know if I would work there, right? Because we're all different. And the chances of getting it right the first time is so hard, which is why I'm saying for me, the best solution of these programs has always been to have a combination of these two. And if you take it from a contract side, if somebody called me right now and go, hey, Christian and Joe, I need an EP program. Can you guys come here and set it up for me? I would be like, sure, no problem. Let's take a meeting and talk through a lot of these things, right? And some of the things that we would have issues with would be very hard for us to know, right? Because when you're a vendor, you only know what you know. if the principals say, yeah, it's good, I like the guys, okay, then you're going to have to take his word for that, because you can't like come in all the times. You're not sure that you're actually getting the responses that they really need, right? And when you're not there and you're not in-house, it can be very hard to figure out. And the guys that you bring in, they might know how to be an employee of this company, or how to be an embedded guy, or whatever that they're supposed to be, right? So I think that the model Joe put up here is great. And I think what we really need to think about is how do we combine these two to build the best EP programs that we possibly can. And that way we can make long-term strategic choices. So that's kind of like my main takeaway. And I wish Joe had been here to do this slideshow with me, but hey, sometimes technology don't want to play the way that we want it to play. And yeah, I'm going to open it up for questions. And if anybody have one, the chat is open, and I'll try and see if I can figure out how to answer these questions. Yeah, there's one here from I think it's Jasmine Kudovic. That's definitely a good one, and I think that he has some good points there. And one of the things that can be is it can be hard sometimes to find good vendor companies, right? And there's unfortunately bad vendor companies. So I think it's important to think about that as well. If anybody have any other questions, please put them up here, and we can talk about it. Thank you. Somebody says it was a good presentation. It could have been better if Joe has been with me, because I only know so much, but thank you. Tiffany says there's the points back and forth. Absolutely, and I like that. I think there's a lot of points, and if you take my slides, that has worked in my experience. There's a lot of other things that in this business play into considerations. Like I said, all clients are different, all corporations are different, but also all vendor companies are different. Maybe you find the best vendor company in the world that has all the answers for you, or maybe they don't. Who knows, right? So it's impossible to say what's best and what's worst. I am a big believer in a combination, like I said in the presentation. All right, any other questions? Well, if not, I would love to say thank you. Thank you to everybody for listening. Feel free to visit our website. Feel free to reach out. I'm all over social media, so is Joe, with any questions. If anybody want to have a version of the slideshow or whatever, feel free to shoot either me or Joe an email, and we'll send it to you. And if you guys, after I hang up here, come up and find some questions that you really want to ask, shoot either me or Joe an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if you guys want more information about executive protection, it's a good idea to check out our YouTube channel, where we go over these what would you do videos, and we have a lot of fun doing them. So I think you should go to YouTube and check them out, and yeah, shoot us some questions if you have any. We're about to record a bunch of new videos. So yeah, anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you all out there, and stay in touch.